Hi and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the diesel heater install on our Ford Transit Connect. I've been away for a week in France fishing, caught some lovely carp. Now it's time to get back onto this. So as always, grab yourself a cuppa. Let's get into it. Okay, we've got the van jacked up on axle stands. Let's get underneath and have a look at the fuel tank and see what we do need to remove. Okay, let's have a look underneath. So what we see here is our fuel tank. We've also got an aluminium heat shield that needs to be removed. We've got a strap that needs to be removed. I'm not quite sure yet if we have 2 straps or just this one. We'll investigate as we go. Into the tank we have 2 lines. That will be our return and our feed up to our engine, so they'll need to come off to help lower the tank. And up the back here we've got our filler neck, and the filler neck will also need to be disconnected there to allow that rubber pipe to give us the option to be able to lower the tank. So in its entirety, there's not too much to do. So let's get into it. Okay, so we had 4 fixings. We can remove them and this can drop out the way. To actually take this out completely, you've got a real struggle getting around the exhaust. So this being like this should be plenty enough space for us to get the tank down. There is of course a second strap. I thought there would be. This is the first time I've ever done a Ford Transit Connect fuel tank drop. I've done plenty of crafters and sprinters and T5s and what have you, customs, but not a Mark 1 Transit Connect. So I'm learning as I go, and I'll show you all the pitfalls or whatever I find along the way. So that's the tank supported with a jack here. The bolt that secures these 2 straps is at this far end. The straps come along and they're hooked into the body of the van up there, so it will drop like this. What I'm going to do now, disconnect these fuel lines, so then we've got a clear connection this side, and then get that fuel tank feed line off. So that's 2 pipes disconnected here, one from here, and taken down off our clips. Right, I hope this makes sense. I've managed to lower the tank a bit and pull off the fill neck pipe. That's disconnected. Over this side, our 3 are disconnected. Here, our bolt is out. You can see that there through the gap. And our straps are down. So we are just resting on the jack now. So I should be able to just lower this jack and get it down to a safe level and check if there is any more connections. I'm sure there's an electrical connection somewhere for a fuel level indicator or something like that, but we'll Okay, so as expected, I've got a cable here that needs disconnecting. This connector here is what sends signals to the fuel gauge, I guess. And that's routed around the top there, comes round and down. I really could have done with this being out a little earlier. That was a bit of a workout. In hindsight, I probably would have jacked the back of the van up as high as I can. That probably would have worked out a lot better for me rather than doing it from the side. So bear that in mind when you do yours. Okay, so I've dragged the tank out from its slumber up under there. So what we have is 3 connectors on the top for our fuel feeds, and also a connector there for our electricity. Now, to fit a standpipe, we are kind of limited on the areas that we can work in. Maybe these 2 areas we can. What we'll do is clean up this area because we don't want any of this to fall in here. And what we'll do is remove this ring and take the sender out and have a little assessment on the desk and see what we're playing with. But yes, one extra one I did forget to mention after finding it was this breather pipe here that feeds next to our filler line. So this here looks like the tank breather. We don't have to do anything with that. So all in all, it's not too bad of a job. You know, 3 fuel pipes to disconnect once the tank's down. 1 connector on top, 2 connections here, and a bolt that holds the straps. As I say, in hindsight, I probably would have had this van jacked up high at the back on ramps or what have you, just to make life a little easier for me, because the tank does want to come down from the back. But something to note for yourself: if you're doing it, roll your van up onto ramps, or jack it up as high as you can from the back and then do it that way. So we have our fuel sender on the bench. Now what we need to do is tap into this with a fuel standpipe. And you get varying types from varying manufacturers, but essentially they all do the same job. The long part is fed down into the system. The nozzles at the end, they're what go out to your diesel heater fuel pump. So we're going to fit one of these. I don't know which one yet. I need to assess what we have going on and where I can mount things. But the idea will be is we need to keep our pipe within this cylinder. It needs to stay within this cylinder wall. So my first thought is to feed the pipe down the back through here. It might be a bit of a challenge, and I might have to come up with an alternative way of fixing and mounting, but the idea would be, I'll get this for an example, that the pipe will run down in behind here and our nozzle would live out here, say, or here, but we'll work it out as we go. So yeah, when you remove these, always best to try and remove as much fuel as you can from them, because it does get a bit messy. Rightio, ladies and gents, I've made my decision. So I'm going to use this standpipe that's got a 6mm hole that needs to be cut through. I can then mount that through here. So this writing here underneath all this is clear. As long as I'm far enough away from the connection and not interfering with this, that will be absolutely fine. So if I grab a Sharpie, I believe I can get away with drilling about here. So I can drill through here. What I will then do is cut our standpipe down to a couple of inches. I can then feed some fuel safe hose on, and then I can use fuel safe hose again to join it, and then run that hose down behind that unit. All I will make sure I do is have this not being right at the bottom, because if we do that, the chances are, or there is a possibility, that we could end up draining our fuel tank with our diesel heater running. So you always want to keep that sort of an inch above so we don't completely drain our fuel tank. Okay, so the standpipe's fitted. We've got our pipe that will be connected onto here. That goes out to our fuel pump. Then under here we have fuel safe rubber hose into our fuel safe pipe, and that runs down behind this fuel gauge level sensor. So to make sure I don't drain the tank if I leave the diesel heater running, I need to compress this to its living position within the tank, and then this can be cut, measured actually, and then I can work out what length I do need. So the blue pipe, I want to cut that down to something around 80mm. So now when I compress, I don't have the blue pipe coming out the bottom, but if we can see up, the blue pipe is coming to around 20mm above the bottom of this face. So that works out just fine for us not to drain the fuel tank. So the final part now is fitting our line that's going to run to our fuel pump for the diesel heater, and we're going to be connecting it onto this. This of course could have been done before this was actually fitted, which might make it a little easier for you. I've got a feeling I might struggle a bit, but I use a bit of silicone spray just to hopefully help things move a little. So that's the standpipe fitting complete. We've gone through to the underside, secured with an O-ring, a washer and a nut. That then comes down to a rubber pipe, fuel safe, into our blue fuel safe line, and that runs down behind this electrics for the fuel gauge. That can't then interfere, getting caught, interrupting this with its movement. If it's tucked in behind, it can't get to it. Out on top, we have a bit of rubber hose again fuel safe. Obviously 2 fuel clamp hoses there, and that feeds out to our diesel heater fuel pump. Now we can get this fitted back in and probably struggle getting it back up in the van. Okay, fuel tank back up. So just to recap, this fitting and this fitting for the fuel, they come off. Up here, your fuel feed from your filler neck, and behind it, this pipe here, which connects behind, which I believe is a breather or an overflow. On top, of course, we've got the connection for the wiring that goes into the top of the sender. You can only get that once you drop the tank. You could really leave these in place when you drop the tank and get them out afterwards when you take the sender out. And also, as I said, what I would probably do different next time is raise up the back, because the tank drops down this way off this bolt here. So we now have our fuel line coming up from our standpipe, and we need to get it connected into our fuel pump, obviously avoiding the exhaust here. So this line is going to route over the top, round the back here, and then connect on. And then we can put this heat shield back up, and this fuel line will be protected from this exhaust. So to further protect this pipe, we're going to feed in some conduit. And that's the final piece in. So we've got our fuel line that runs from our pump back up into the chassis, behind the heat shield, away from our exhaust. Fortunately, this exhaust does also have a heat shield built into it as well, which is excellent. That pipe then runs up the back here, up into our fuel tank. So that's all the underside complete on the van now. Everything is wired in, ready to go. We can work on the inside and get our ducting sorted, and also look at our electrics for once we get our leisure battery in. Right then, we've got our heater installed and we've also got our standpipe fitted in the fuel tank. What we're going to look at now is the wiring side. Now the wiring that I've got for this, this is a previous install, and the wiring has been bodged a little bit by me. It still works fine, obviously. It's just not what you would probably get in your kits. But I'll go through what we do get. Let's have a look. So this is the wiring harness that I'll be using. You have a connector like this which will go into your heater. You'll have an earth wire. You'll have 2 wires that go to your fuel pump, and generally a 3-wire cable that will go out to your controller. You'll also have a red wire which is the positive to your battery or your bus bar. And here we have a kit from another model. So the principles are still the same. You'll have a connector that goes into your heater harness. You'll have a connector that's 2-wire that goes to your fuel pump. You'll of course have a positive to go to your battery or bus bar. You'll have a negative to go to your battery or bus bar, and then again you'll have a 3-wire connection that goes out to your controller. So it's very, very simple to wire in. All you need to consider is the distance of your cable. Lovely stuff. Right, so our ducting is on, routed in up into behind the seat, and that will live at a lower level towards the floor because heat rises. We have our harness tied in for our fuel pump. We have our positive and negative ready to extend, and we've also fed through our heat control wiring. So the ducting is perfectly fine here. It will probably live something like this. There'll be a fascia that's made up with the control panel and obviously the capping and the heating vent, and then that will be able to blow into the van and make it a nice place to be when it's cold outside. So for all intents and purposes, that's about it for the heater install on this part. I guess there will be a part 3 which will be finishing up the wiring once we've got our battery located and of course the first fire up. But this second part mainly was about getting that standpipe fitted under the van into the fuel tank, which is certainly easier with 2 people, and I've learned along the way myself that it'd be better to jack the back of the van upwards rather than taking it from the side. Okay, that is it for part 2. There probably is going to be a part 3, which is wiring that up, giving it the first start and that. I haven't got a leisure battery, so we can't do it. But the main principle for this film was to drop the fuel tank and fit the standpipe. Hopefully that's come across and I've shown you how I've gone about it and given you hints of what you should do. In the future, on a Ford Transit Connect Mark 1, I will certainly raise the back of the van up. I won't do it from the side, I'll raise the back. The tank wants to drop to the back of the van, and that will make it a lot easier. I'd also recommend 2 people if you've never dropped a tank before as well. And of course, make sure there is very little fuel in the tank. Weight certainly adds up the more fuel you've got in it. In the next part of the films, we're going to be finishing off the ceiling, getting the lights in, and then we're going to start building some units and pieces. Really start kicking on with this. I've also got some ideas for windows which I've had from other people, so I'm going to look into them as well. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Do hit the thumbs up, do subscribe down below, and do hit the bell notification. That tells you when I next upload. Leave a comment, let us know your thoughts. I do this job for a living, so hopefully I can help you along the way with your builds for any hints and tips that you might need. Till then, we'll catch you on the next one.